Welcome to season 2 of Fresh Off the Board. My name is Arjun. I'm the founder director of Edbrand at collegefair.live. Today we have a very special guest, Prakriti Chopra. She's a graduate from Ashoka University, graduated in 2021. And following that, she's been also helping out as an intern and associate at Edbrand for a few months before she heads out to pursue her master's in development studies at Oxford University. So welcome, Prakriti, and go ahead and introduce yourself, and we take it from there.
Thank you so much for having me here. I'm really happy to be here and have a conversation with you. Well, I think you pretty much covered my journey, as it were, from school to, well, me leaving in the fall. I've always been a social sciences person, I think, and that's been a very defining aspect of my character, which is something that I think I carried forward from school to college, and that's something that I'm going to also have reflect in my master's. So I think I was always pretty decided on a niche that I wanted to pursue academically. And I think my college years allowed me to sort of narrow down even further on where I saw myself within that niche. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I think talking about that a little bit, when students apply, and at Edbrand we have students who are looking at majors, but we know that they might change their mind because they're good at two or three different kind of complementing fields, or even very divergent topics or subject areas that they fancy. So how was your journey from school? Was it a kind of a consistent path that you knew what you wanted to do, and then how was it like settling in the academic cadence at Ashoka?
Right. So I decided to pursue humanities in 11th and 12th grade under the ISC board. And while honestly, my experience pursuing humanities in school was not very great in the sense that the syllabus was very old, it hadn't been updated. There was a lot that, you had to mug up. So I don't think I was actually introduced to humanities in the true sense until I got to college, because it was only in college that original research was demanded of me. I was supposed to have my own research interests, things that I wanted to take further. So when I entered Ashoka, I had a very narrow idea of international relations, and that was something that really piqued my interest because I had been for a bunch of MUNs and everything that a humanities student does at school. But turns out I had a very incorrect impression of what international relations is, as well as the subjects that you pursue at university, because there's a lot of similarities or connections, I think is the right word, that you can make between disciplines, which is something that I really came to learn. So although I couldn't pursue an international relations major and I did political science, a lot of my research used concepts in political science and international relations and sociology and anthropology to help me further what I wanted to research about and what I wanted to write about and what I wanted to change in the world I saw around me.
So if you can kind of reflect on specific inspirations or sort of learning moments in Ashoka where you could see uh, clearly what you wanted to go after in terms of your research interests. Who, what kind of influences and experiences did you have which led you to pursuing what you did eventually?
Right. So, like I said, in when you study political science in school, they throw words like liberty, equality, fraternity, sovereignty, all of that at you, right? Without you really understanding what its real world implications are. And that's the conception I had going into college as well, right? That there were these concepts, and you study these concepts, and you learn these concepts, and you write about them. But when I got to college, I started trying to find these concepts in the world around me, which is what got me to observe that the experiences of women, and then women of color, and then women of color living in rural areas, there were just all of these layers of complexity that got added one by one, which sort of got me to the point that, our identity is not singular. There are so many aspects of our identity that intersect and determine where we go in life and are, at the very outset. So I think what I landed upon was something called intersectionality. And in particular, how climate change and our progress towards development and sustainable living, what does it bode for people with all of these identities, right? And especially, for instance, violence against women, right? Because sustainable living is considered great, but there's also stuff hidden. So I would say intersectionality and what's hidden underneath it.
So it's pretty fascinating and sort of going deep into seeing those overlaps, which seemingly, doesn't meet the eye uh, as easily as just reading or solving a math question. So,
Definitely.
were there like reasons or other inspirations? Could be a teacher, could be, particularly maybe texts that you read, which led you to believe that
Mhm.
finding those intersectionalities would be something that would interest you. So yeah, giving
Definitely.
readers some insight, or watchers, listeners, to have some insight into what they should be reading, some resources that you'd like to share with us.
Definitely. So, one thing I really appreciated about the International Relations Department at Ashoka is that all of their professors come from such varying backgrounds. Some have had exemplary careers in diplomacy, while some have gone on to conduct so much research and field work and present their findings. Some do it in a qualitative manner, some do it in a quantitative manner. So I think my profile is a little bit of all of those, and I really appreciate that. So, when it comes to reading, the advice I would have is don't restrict yourself to a singular point of view, right? For a really long time, I thought qualitative research was the only thing I was interested in, and that was the only thing I would read about. And then I got introduced to, the concept of like programming in political science. And I thought, wait a minute, here's something I didn't know could help me. So when it comes to reading, I think don't be afraid to explore various both sides of the coin, I would say, and not just go for what's black and white, but gray. And actually, see where you go with that. Don't read just because you need to do it for your course or you'll sound more intellectual in classrooms. Read because there's something that matters to you and you want to be involved and connected with it. Connection is a word that's really important, I feel, in the kind of study research I do.
So if you were to say talk about climate change and gender rights, let's just say,
Mhm.
are there any specific resources, yeah, books, authors, professors one could follow? I think you can even share it later and we'll add it to the
I
chat.
have a,
Yeah,
I have
not too
like,
much.
uh, you just tell me how many you want
Great.
and I'll send it to you, like sorted by like region. Also, one thing I think was really interesting was, I came to understand how so much of what we read is written by a particular section of, academic researchers. uh, and I started thinking, why is everything that I read, even about, say, people like about caste in India, maybe, or the kind of, even though there's so much great writing by, like women of color or like activists, we don't really read so much about them. Like so much of the international relations I've seen just focuses on, like power politics between America and Russia, and I guarantee that's important. But I'm looking at the more humane side of it, you could say, without trying to sound unnecessarily vain. But yeah.
So clearly, I think you had this whole scholarly sort of flair, and you pursued student life with all the vigor that you had. What was the rest of your life at Ashoka like? Was it really stressful, even on the extracurricular front, or how did you
Mhm.
manage work and life?
Right. I think going into college, all of us feel like we need to make the most of the time we have there. And we have certain goals that we set in our head saying, listen, this is the college experience, this is it, you have to live it up. But I think letting go of some of that and actually finding a space within myself, like on campus, that make me feel comfortable is more important. And that's when you start finding the friends you're interested in, and the clubs that you genuinely care about, and then live it up also. So I think that's really important, and that's something that I did find. So I'm quite glad about that.
Well, Ashoka also provides some sort of pre-professional opportunities, could be career sort of internships or even research for students who are interested to pursue the fourth year that they offer, or research at some other institution in later life. So how was it like for you? You were at the Center for Policy Research.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Ashoka has so many centers, and each of them take up, an equally important issue or project, relating to the world around us, and they're always hiring, and a lot of professors also have really interesting things that they do other than teaching, why, which is how I actually got to be a research intern at the Center for Policy Research. I had a sociology and anthropology professor who's a fiscal anthropologist, and she was heading a project at the Center of Policy Research trying to map the moral economy of the Indian bureaucracy. And that sounded like such an interesting thing because when we look at the bureaucracy, it's, oh my God, red tape, like corruption. But, digging deep down and actually trying to do research on it is pretty interesting. So I think I went up to her and we had a conversation, and she said, why don't you come help me out for a bit? So that was there. And I think there are a lot of opportunities. You should just, I think, don't go for everything that you see in front of you because you're scared that you might not find one. I think really narrow down on what you think will add value, not just to your CV, but to what you're interested in, and then pursue that. I think that led me to better outcomes, and that's something that I would advise, students to do.
And as far as going back to making the best of student life and pursuing maybe hobbies, interests, passion projects,
Mhm.
is there something that you wish that you did more while you were at college, or you think you did enough? And what are the few things that?
I think I had just about, found my groove in college, and this was towards the middle of second year, and then COVID hit us like a bullet train, and suddenly I was back home for a year. So I think if there's anything about my college experience that me and my friends really talk about is just, how that year sort of just came in the middle like a very heavy obstacle that you could do nothing about. And it sort of took away some of that time that you have at college. And I got about 2 months towards the end, and like you're just like, okay, I'm going to go all out now. So yeah, COVID, I think, definitely had a massive impact. But in terms of like student, like in social life, I had found, a nice balance that I was quite happy with.
Thank you so much, Prakriti. I think this has been a delightful conversation. We'll be following your work at Oxford, and all the best.
Thank you so much. Thank you.